Thank you very much, Michael, and thanks to Pastor Troy for inviting me. Am I audible in all parts of the auditorium? Our high school principal used to say that whenever he got to the microphone, which always made us laugh, because we could count on it. So I'm glad to be here, and what a privilege it is to be with you and to hear Michael's music and to be part of this congregation. Troy and Tammy are neighbors of ours, and that's a good thing. We've gotten to know them. And speaking of neighbors, Bill and Mary Lemon live 2 doors away from us. And Bill and I have had good conversations about your prayer and thinking as a congregation about the future. And I wish more congregations were doing what you're doing, which is taking a risk and moving forward and trusting the Spirit and trusting each other to look at the needs and resources that you bring and the needs of the community as we both look inside and look outside to see what God is calling us to do. I also want to thank Laura Taylor, your community life coordinator, and Stephen Kennedy, your youth and family pastor. They've been really good at communicating with me. And when I know from experience, when the pastor's on sabbatical, communication becomes really, really important. And I'm grateful to both of them and for many of you for your warm welcome and keeping me in the loop. I love this time of year, these first 2 weeks of November, as we move through All Hallows Eve, commonly known as Halloween, the eve before All Saints' Day, November 1st, when we remember those who have died. And then, of course, we move right through that week into Remembrance Day on November 11th, this coming week. And we remember the ancestors. We remember those who served. We remember those who have touched our lives and are with us, but rejoice on another shore and in a greater light. I've lost 2 friends, one 98, one 88. They lived good, long lives, but 2 of them were my mentors, wise elders who guided me and challenged me and encouraged me. And this time of year, we're surrounded by that community that rejoices with us and supports us and leads us forward. And finally, it's really good of you to welcome an Anglican. How many Anglicans does it take to change a light bulb? It's usually 10. 1 to change the bulb, 4 to argue about how to change the bulb, and 5 to comment on how much better the old bulb was, even though it didn't work. Thank you. Thank you. This is a prayer written in the darkest days of World War II by an American pastor of German descent. Dr. Reinhold Niebuhr composed this prayer. God, give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed. Courage to change the things that ought to be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. And all the people said, Amen. I'm going to play a song now, along with my friend Michael, my new friend Michael, and it's a song that you will probably know. In normal times, we would sing it. In normal times, I would break you up into different parts to have some harmony and so on, but alas, we can't do that. So you're going to have to put up with my singing. But you can sing in your hearts. You can hum. You can sing outdoors anytime. You can even sing in the shower tomorrow morning. So here's our little song. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Sisters, brothers, all. You know that song to be, "We are climbing Jacob's ladder." And you know that that story, where the song comes from, is from a story in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Genesis. Here's a quick refresher. Jacob was running away from his brother Esau, and while on the run, he had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching into heaven. And angels of God were ascending and descending on the stairway. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." You may know that the song was a spiritual sung by slaves longing for freedom, longing for that path that would lead them from misery and imprisonment to freedom and liberation. You may know that song is one that brings people together because we are all trying to have a bridge between heaven and earth, between what is possible in God's realm and God's vision and where we are now. You may know that that song is really about linking heaven and earth, our souls rising up and down the ladder along with the angels that surround us. And there is, and we know this, a visible world and an invisible world. And unfortunately, these days, many folks are having trouble with the invisible world. We want to kind of keep it all just visible and rational. And yet there is an invisible world. So for example, I was doing some leadership work with executives from Hydro One. And they got to know my background, and they were teasing me about the invisible world. Tim believes in the invisible world. And it kind of got to me. So I remember one night at dinner I said, "Please explain electricity to me. How is it that I turn the switch on? There's visible light, but how does electricity work?" So they left me alone after that. My mother used to have big arguments with the old family doctor. It got so bad that the secretary would give my mother the last appointment of the day. And she came home one night steaming. She said, he does not believe in the soul. He does not believe in the soul. He said that he went through the whole human body and there wasn't a soul, but she said there is a soul. We know there's a soul. And I remember these conversations because she was always tied up and dinner was late. The visible and the invisible world. And we know about the Spirit, and we know about love, and we know about hope, and we know about those things that touch us deeply. Things like music. Music. Invisible, and yet so enriching for our souls. So the ladder, with the angels going up and down, makes me think of prayer. Those prayers that go up and down, that communication that goes up and down, that communication between God, who is speaking to us, and our listening hearts, and our prayers to the Creator of heaven and earth. And that's what I'd like to focus on for a few minutes as we gather. This idea of prayer. And specifically, I want to focus on the Lord's Prayer. I want to focus on the Our Father. I want to use that as a place to form our own thoughts about the connection between us and God. I'm going to take a few moments with each phrase because the prayer is something anyone can pray anytime. And it's the strongest prayer. It's the greatest prayer. And it's a prayer that links us and puts us in touch with God. Jesus gave his friends this prayer when they said, Lord, teach us to pray. And so he came up with this prayer from his childhood, presumably. Who taught Jesus to pray? Who taught you to pray? Who taught me to pray? The Our Father. And before I just take a look at it, there are a couple of things I just want to note. One is that when you really think about it, it's called the Lord's Prayer, but it's a very strange prayer because it doesn't mention Lord. It doesn't mention Jesus. It doesn't mention church. It doesn't mention Bible. It doesn't mention faith. It's a prayer from the human heart that is a powerful, powerful prayer. So let's take a look at it phrase by phrase. Our Father, our Father. My heart and my mind were opened when in my congregations we opened our doors and our minds and our hearts as a congregation to welcome the 12 step groups into the church basement. They called it down there the downstairs church. And they begin their meeting by saying, whose Father? Our Father. And here I was, the minister of the church. I would go down a couple of times a year to welcome them and say how important it was they were meeting in the downstairs church. And I understood this to be a matter of life and death. And we had Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. We had groups from the community meeting and praying in the downstairs church. Whose Father? Our Father. There's a New Zealand version of the Lord's Prayer that begins this way. Eternal Spirit, Earth Maker, Pain Bearer, Life Giver, Source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. Our Father, our Creator, Father and Mother. We're trying on our ladder of hope to connect with another level, a higher power, a love beyond ours, a love supreme. God is all, John Coltrane wrote in his famous commentary on A Love is Supreme. A power beyond our power, the source of life, the creator of heaven and earth. Our Father. Hallowed be thy name. God's name is in many ways unknown. God says, I am who I am. I will be who I will be. This ineffable being, this source of life, has a reality, and we know when we're in the presence of someone and we get to know their name and their story, how sacred that is. The holy name of God, not given to us as a weapon or for magic, but as a powerful way of connecting with the Creator of heaven and earth. Thy kingdom come. God's kingdom, God's realm, God's values, God's vision might come on earth as it is in heaven. The latter linking with the angels going up and down, linking our longing for a world where all of God's children enjoy the blessings of freedom and peace. We live with a vision of how things might be. We have glimpses of the divine coming into our world, and when we are open with hearts and minds to God's inbreaking vision, things happen. William Temple said, "When I pray, coincidences happen, and when I don't, they don't." We are touched often, aren't we, by coincidences, meaningful events that have meaning for us. And we know that God is with us and giving us messages. Give us each day our daily bread, reminding us that we who are well filled should be hungry, not only for food, but for the Word, the living Spirit. And give us this day our daily bread also reminds us that we need to be working for justice and dignity so all of God's children can have a meal and have the blessings of freedom and peace and security and dignity. And forgive us our trespasses. Notice it's forgive us. Forgive me. I pray first that I might be forgiven in order to offer God's forgiveness to others. This always touches me deeply, that I'm to come and pray for my forgiveness, our forgiveness. It's easy to think we need to forgive everyone else, but we come first in our plea and need and longing for forgiveness. When have you been forgiven? What opportunity did you have where someone embraced you with love and acceptance? Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Echoes of the Psalm of David, the 23rd Psalm. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. A beautiful doxology from the Greek word doxa, which means right glory. The doxology, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. The prayer ends by completing the circle, directing our attention back to the source of all love and all life, back to the beginning. You may have been, as I have been, in opportunities to pray the Lord's Prayer with people with other languages. I always find that very moving, to hear the languages of God's people praying this universal prayer. This prayer Jesus gave humanity, this prayer that invites us to consciously participate in a ladder of angels going up and down, connecting heaven and earth. The Lord's Prayer. If you pray this prayer regularly, with an open heart and an open mind, taking time with the phrases, you will have an encounter with the source of all love and all life. If you pray this prayer, knowing so many others are praying it too, because the first word is our, you will experience a sense of belonging. And if you pray this prayer with an open heart and an open mind, there will be growth in faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. Encounter, belonging, growth. Your covenant. The ladder in Jacob's dream connects heaven and earth. The prayer that we pray connects heaven and earth. I invite you to say it with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I'm going to play the song Jacob's Ladder once more. Such a beautiful piano, such a wonderful time to be with you, and to let these rich words of music touch our hearts. And I'll be back the first Sunday in December. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Sisters, brothers, oh.